hated for the
I
people that-
still am a major star from the standpoint of my past career. I'm never going to have as many parts anymore at this age. We arrived in a courtroom in Maine to do with the custody of our daughter Barbara.
I hated her so much that I forgot who I was. That was the final sentence Bette Davis uttered in her interview with Vanity Fair in 1988, just a year before she died. At the time, Bette was 81. She sat by the window of her small Beverly Hills apartment, gazing into the sunset, and began to speak slowly, wearily, yet without evasion about the final truth of the woman she had spent her entire life both envying and being unable to escape, Joan Crawford. It was a confession, a curse, and a truth that Hollywood never dared to acknowledge, the thing that haunted these two queens for more than half a century, turning their fame into a battlefield. So why did it take Bette Davis until the age of 81 to finally reveal these things? And what made her believe that even after Joan Crawford's death, their war was still not over? Let's find out. And perhaps to understand the bitterness behind every word of "I hated her so much that I forgot who I was," we have to go back to 1933 to where it all began, where Bette Davis first learned that in the glittering world of Hollywood, betrayal doesn't come from your enemies, but from the colleagues who get the loudest applause. In 1933, Hollywood was basking in the golden glow of the talkie-era flashbulb-lit parties, white powdered faces, and crimson lips, contracts sealed with champagne. Amid all that, 25-year-old Bette Davis from Massachusetts had just been chosen by Warner Bros. To star in Ex-Lady. It was a golden opportunity, the turning point that could put her on the same level as A-list goddesses like Jean Harlow or even Joan Crawford herself. The night before the premiere, Bette could hardly sleep. She wrote a letter to her mother. "Tomorrow you'll see my face on every front page in Los Angeles. I won't be a nobody anymore." She folded the letter, placed it on her dressing table, her eyes shining with hope, certain that her destiny was about to change. But the next morning, when her assistant brought in the Los Angeles Times, her voice caught in her throat. There was no mention of Ex-Lady on the front page, no photo of Bette, not a single line about the premiere. Instead, 4 full columns screamed in bold print, "Joan Crawford divorces Douglas Fairbanks Jr. MGM Queen cries through the night." The room froze. Bette held her coffee cup hands trembling before it slipped from her grip and shattered on the carpet. The sound of breaking porcelain echoed like the sound of her heart cracking in silence. All morning, no one on the production dared say a word. By noon, Bette's manager, Howard Greer, walked in and laid a telegram on the table sent from a reporter friend at MGM. It read simply, "Divorce story, submitted to newsroom at midnight by Crawford's assistant." Bette read it again and again, then gave a faint, bitter smile. "I see. Around here, if you want a good premiere, you'd better pick the right day." That evening, instead of attending the gala, she sat alone in her room at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, staring out the window toward the glowing MGM sign across the boulevard. A light drizzle fell, reflecting the neon shimmer, and in that moment, Bette realized Hollywood wasn't just a stage. It was a battlefield. 30 years later, in a 1963 interview when asked about the Ex-Lady premiere, she simply replied, "That was the day I learned what betrayal felt like." Years afterward, a veteran journalist from The Hollywood Reporter revealed in his memoir, Joan Crawford sent 3 major Los Angeles newspapers each a Cartier diamond bracelet in exchange for printing her divorce story on the front page the same morning Warner Bros. Was releasing Ex-Lady. The story was never confirmed, but everyone in the industry knew one thing: Joan never let anyone else steal the spotlight, especially a girl who hadn't yet learned how to smile for the camera. From that day on, Bette Davis's eyes changed. She no longer believed in the fairness of the press, nor in friendly embraces backstage. She once said, "I thought Hollywood was heaven. Turns out it's a casino where the one who cheats first always wins." And that was only the beginning of 50 years of resentment. A feud that would consume two of the most talented women ever to grace the screen. Because right after that first betrayal, Joan Crawford didn't just steal Bette's headline, she was about to steal the only man Bette Davis ever truly loved. In 1935, on the RKO set of Dangerous Bette Davis, then 27, was at the peak of her hunger for recognition for love for escape from her label as Warner Bros.' Cold Girl. Among her co-stars was a man who made her heart beat for the first time, Franchot Tone, a young MGM actor with a gentle smile and a voice as warm as whiskey with honey. He was unlike other Hollywood men, less flash, more soul. He complimented her not for her looks, but for her eyes so real they're frightening. And that was enough. For the woman who once said, "I don't need love, I need a career," something inside her began to melt. After filming, she often stayed behind, talking with Tone about scripts, about her fear of being swallowed by the glamour machine. He would listen, smile softly sometimes, light her cigarette and whisper, "Bet you have something they don't have, a soul." Those words silenced her for a moment, then made her laugh like a young girl. Every night she waited for his familiar knock, sometimes just to share a cup of black coffee in her small room at the Roosevelt. Later she would recall, "I truly believed that if there was ever a man who understood me, it was him." But in Hollywood, every sweet story has someone listening behind the door. And this time, that listener was none other than Joan Crawford, the reigning queen of MGM, then 30 years old, powerful, experienced, and dangerous as a panther that knows how to hide its claws. Joan saw Franchot Tone at a Beverly Hills party and with one glance decided, "He will be mine." Somehow, the things Bette shared about her romance, the late-night coffees, the shy glances, reached Joan's ears. In Hollywood, rumors traveled faster than light. Crawford struck with the weapon she wielded best, calculated seduction. One Friday afternoon, she invited Tone to a quiet dinner in Brentwood, just to discuss a new script and role. He went, and when the door closed behind him, it was like a verdict. That same night, while Bette sat in her hotel room writing to her mother about the gentlest man I've ever met across town, Franchot Tone was dancing with Joan Crawford in the golden candlelight, the Victrola humming softly. They laughed, raised their glasses, and the rest Hollywood would tell for her. A week later, the cover of Photoplay magazine hit the stands, a photo of Franchot Tone and Joan Crawford hand in hand at an MGM party. The headline stretched across the page. Joan Crawford's new love Bette was in the dressing room when a friend tossed the magazine onto her table with an awkward smile. She said nothing. She just stared at the picture, silent, then folded the magazine and threw it into the trash. That afternoon, she vanished from the set. No one knew where she went. Later, a colleague recalled, "She didn't eat for 3 days. No one dared approach her." Joan Crawford, on the other hand, seemed to want Bette to know. She sent a short note. "Franchot speaks of you often. He truly admires you." A line so elegantly cruel it glittered like cut glass. Bette kept the letter in her drawer, tore it in half, then taped it back together as if unable to let it go. Years later, when asked about Franchot Tone, she said, "Only I won the role, but she won my heart." On October 11, 1935, Joan Crawford and Franchot Tone married in her Brentwood home. The press called it the wedding of the year. Bette sat alone in her small Burbank apartment, a photo of Tone smiling in front of her. That same day, she received 2 telegrams, one from the Academy announcing her Best Actress win for Dangerous, and one from a Variety reporter breaking news of the wedding. She just laughed softly. I won the Oscar, she won the man. Fair enough. According to The Hollywood Reporter in 1988, on the couple's first anniversary in 1936, Bette Davis sent a wreath of pure white funeral lilies to Crawford's Brentwood mansion. The small card read, "In memory of what died in me." The mailman later said Crawford looked at the card for a few seconds, then smiled faintly. She still hasn't learned how to lose. But in truth, that moment marked the beginning of a war with no end. Bette would never forget standing before the mirror, the strong woman Hollywood adored, now seeing the reflection of someone defeated in a game that was never fair. From then on, Joan Crawford was no longer a colleague in her eyes, but a ghost that followed her through every role, every smile, every time the lights came on. Bette Davis would later say, her voice low and distant as if speaking to herself, "If I hadn't met Franchot Tone, maybe I wouldn't have hated her so much. But maybe if she hadn't existed, I would never have learned how to fight." That was only the second chapter in a lifetime of jealousy and wounds between two queens. Because after stealing Bette's man, Joan Crawford wasn't finished. Hollywood was about to witness a new game where every bouquet of flowers came laced with poison. The stolen love of 1935 might have seemed the peak of their feud. But for these two women, the battlefield never closed. Nearly 8 years later, when Joan Crawford's fame at MGM was fading, fate arranged for them to collide again, not on screen, but under the same studio roof. In early 1943, Hollywood buzzed with news that Joan Crawford had left MGM after nearly 2 decades. Variety and the Los Angeles Examiner headlined "MGM Queen Falls, searching for a new home." Just 2 months later, Warner Brothers announced an exclusive contract with Crawford, placing her under the same roof as Bette Davis, the studio's reigning treasure. The news spread like wildfire. Reporters called it the most dangerous experiment in studio history. Two women who couldn't share the same sky now forced to share the same lot. When Joan arrived at Warner for her publicity photos, the corridors were eerily quiet. No one wanted to be caught between those two forces of nature. The next morning, Bette received a bouquet of white orchids and a handwritten note, "To my dear sister at Warner. I hope we can start anew. Fondly, Joan." Reading the signature, Bette's lips curled into a cold smile. She scribbled a few words on a small piece of paper, folded it neatly, and told her assistant to return the flowers to Brentwood. Inside the note was a single line, "I'm allergic to fakes." 20 years later, in an unpublished memoir by Bette's personal assistant, Margaret Williams, a chilling detail emerged: "I was the one who smelled the bouquet. The petals had a strange, fine powder on them. A week after receiving it, Bette was hospitalized with severe rashes, swollen eyes, and difficulty breathing. Doctors diagnosed a serious allergic reaction to chemical dust. No one dared point fingers, but in Warner's back halls, people whispered that Joan Crawford had dusted the bouquet with nickel-based makeup powder, the same kind she used to brighten her skin under the lights. Variety stayed silent. Warner Brothers issued a statement: "Mrs. Davis is down with a mild flu." But everyone inside the studio knew it wasn't the flu. A former editor recalled, "In the dressing room, someone heard Bette say, 'If she wants a war, I'll give her one.'" The whole set went cold. From that day on, they stopped speaking altogether. If communication was needed, it went through secretaries or directors. It was as if a blade had drawn a line between them. During meetings, Bette would always arrive 10 minutes late just to avoid sitting at the same table as Crawford. Joan, meanwhile, sent gifts to directors: Cuban cigars, French wine polite cards, ensuring every accidental script change landed in her favor. One spring evening in 1944, Warner Brothers hosted a grand gala at the Ambassador Hotel with over 200 guests. When the MC announced Bette Davis, she appeared in a sleek black gown, her gaze like thunder. At the entrance, Joan Crawford approached, smiling, and extended a hand. "Welcome to Warner, Bette." Bette stopped. The room went silent. For 5 tense seconds, she stared at the offered hand, then straightened her back and walked past without a word. The swish of her dress against the floor was loud enough to make people shiver. A Hollywood Reporter-journalist later wrote, "Never had I seen coldness so mesmerizing." That was the moment Hollywood realized this feud would never end. The consequences came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after the gala, Joan Crawford phoned the studio head Jack Warner. Her voice was icy, "Either Bette goes or I do." The quote was recorded in internal memos, throwing the studio into chaos. Jack Warner, known for his ruthlessness, only sighed, "2 stars, 1 sky, 1 has to dim." To cool the storm, the studio temporarily suspended both women for 2 months without pay, citing disruptive behavior. During that time, Joan continued to attend charity galas, smiling radiantly when asked about Bette. "She's special, very sensitive." Bette, recovering in the hospital, told a Variety reporter who visited, "I don't hate orchids. I just hate the person who sent them." From that moment on, there was no turning back. Every public smile, every forced handshake was just another mask. Hollywood gave them a new name, the Poison Roses of Warner Brothers. And that war, fueled by jealousy, pride, and deadly silence, had only just begun. After the Poisoned Orchids incident, everyone at Warner Brothers felt like they were walking on thin ice. No one dared mention Bette's name when Joan was present, and vice versa. The 2 stars became a blazing yet perilous constellation. Wherever they went, the air grew so thick it seemed ready to ignite. Even so, Hollywood's fate was not yet tired of its own taunting games. Because just a few years later, a new script would fall right into the hands of destiny. And this time, the prize wasn't a man, but a golden statue powerful enough to rewrite a person's honor. In 1945, Warner Brothers began production on Mildred Pierce, a psychological drama about a betrayed single mother, a role originally written specifically for Bette Davis. It was the kind of role she was born to play, fierce, layered, both fragile and ruthless. Directors all said, "If anyone can make audiences believe in a tormented woman, it's Davis." But Hollywood is a place where any role can be bought if the bidder pays enough. Joan Crawford, who had just been let go by MGM, was desperate for a rebirth. She appeared in director Michael Curtis's office with a deadly calm, carrying a small box from Tiffany. Inside was a gold watch engraved for timing and passion, for one who knows patience and desire. Curtis later recalled that Crawford's eyes both pleaded and commanded. 3 days later, he changed his mind. The role of Mildred Pierce went to Joan Crawford. The news hit Bette like a knife. At the press conference, when a reporter asked if she regretted losing the role, Bette shrugged, "A betrayed mother. It suits her. It wasn't a joke. It was the first stab in a new war." Mildred Pierce premiered in late 1945 to thunderous success. Variety called it Joan Crawford's second baptism. Theaters in New York hung her photo in a black dress with pained eyes, a victorious smile. Hollywood buzzed Joan was back. When the film was nominated for Best Actress, Bette smirked at a party and said, "If awards are given for acting, I'm not worried. If they're given for jewelry, I've already lost." On the night of March 7, 1946, at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Los Angeles, the Oscars took place. Joan Crawford feigned a severe flu and stayed home. Yet her suite at the Ambassador Hotel glowed all night. When the MC announced, "And the Oscar goes to Joan Crawford," Mildred Pierce, she rose from bed, threw on a white fur robe, and swept down to the lobby with flawless makeup, as if she'd known the result all along. Bette Davis was absent that night, but 3 days later, Life magazine received an anonymous photo, an Oscar tossed in a trash bin beside a broken wine glass cigarette butts, and a scrawled note award of the year for the one who knows how to buy, not act. No signature was needed. All of Hollywood knew who sent it. In a final 1988 interview, Bette admitted she was the sender. "I did it because I believe she bought that statue. She didn't win for talent, she won for diamonds." According to Bette, before the ceremony, Joan Crawford had gifted Cartier bracelets to 2 Academy members. No one ever proved it, but the rumor spread like a virus. The Hollywood Reporter ran the headline, "The Golden Statue Smells of Diamonds." Variety published a wry editorial, "A performance worthy of an award, unclear whether on film or off." A logistics staffer for the Oscars later wrote in his memoir, "After the ceremony, Crawford requested a police escort out of backstage, saying, 'Get me out of here before Bette arrives.'" The line swept through Hollywood and became immortal lore. From that moment, their war was etched into film history, not mere jealousy, but a curse of fame. Bette Davis once whispered to a close friend, "If she wants the statue, let her keep it. I'll take her soul on screen." No one expected that a few years later that vow would come true. For the first time in 2 decades, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford would be cast in the same film, and this time, real blood would be spilled. In 1962, Hollywood was shedding its skin. A new generation, Audrey Hepburn, Elizabeth Taylor, ruled the screen while the queens of the golden age like Bette Davis and Joan Crawford were pushed to the margins. When director Robert Aldrich set out to make Whatever Happened to Baby Jane a chilling tale of 2 aging sisters, one deranged and one crippled, trapped together in a decaying mansion, he knew that only 2 women who hated each other to the bone could make audiences believe such cruelty. Warner Brothers offered equal pay to both, but Bette set the first condition. "I'll do it only if she doesn't touch the script." Joan, of course, agreed only to quietly revise her lines days later. Tension erupted at the first table read. Bette walked in holding a bottle of Coca-Cola, a half smile on her lips. The room fell silent. Everyone knew Joan Crawford sat on Pepsi's board. When the director asked why she'd brought Coke into the meeting, Bette said coolly, "I only drink what isn't watered down." That afternoon, Joan struck back by installing a Pepsi vending machine right beside Davis's dressing room. From then on, each shooting day began with the scent of cola and the taste of hatred. What followed showed everyone what a battlefield set truly meant. In one scene, Bette as Baby Jane had to beat her paralyzed sister, played by Joan. Personal hatred blew past the script. When the camera rolled, Bette swung for real. The dummy head in the shot slammed into Joan's forehead. A dry crack sounded. Blood trickled, no prop this time. The take was so perfect that Aldrich shouted, "Cut brilliant." But Joan needed 3 stitches, and the look she gave Bette held something both wounded and cold as steel. The next day, Joan struck back. In another scene, Baby Jane must drag her crippled sister across the floor. Joan secretly hid 22 pounds of weights under her voluminous dress. During the take, Bette strained and couldn't budge her. They repeated the scene again and again until a tendon snapped in Bette's back. She screamed and collapsed to the floor while Joan let out a thin, satisfied laugh. A crew member later said, "No one dared intervene. We were watching 2 legends destroy each other, and the camera was the only witness." News leaked within the week. The Los Angeles Examiner blared, "The blood on Baby Jane's floor isn't a prop." Audiences half believed, half doubted, but ticket sales soared. The more they hated each other, the more seats they filled, and Hollywood knew it. During filming, the air grew so heavy that a single glance could set it off. One crew member recalled, "Every time Bette finished a scene, Joan would walk the set, spritzing Chanel No. 5. She said it was to freshen the air. but everyone knew she wanted to erase Bette Davis's scent from the room. Later in an interview, Bette stared straight into the camera and said, "That scene wasn't acting, that was me giving back everything she did to me. I just used the camera to make it legal." When Whatever Happened to Baby Jane opened, it became an instant phenomenon. Audiences trembled, terrified and enthralled, unable to tell where performance ended and reality began. The cuts on Joan's hands, the bruises on the back of Betty's neck all appeared on screen with a ghastly authenticity. The press raved, "Two aging queens make Hollywood bow." But behind the praise, the set still stank of antiseptic, and Chanel No. 5 the scent of blood and pride. They thought that after Baby Jane the war was over, that they'd poured all their hatred into the film. They were wrong, because the grandest, cruelest, most public revenge was still waiting for them on the next year's Oscar stage. February 1963, the Oscar nominations were announced. All of Hollywood waited to hear the names of the two women who had shaken the screen with Baby Jane. When the host read aloud, nominated for Best Actress, Bette Davis. Whatever happened to Baby Jane, the hall erupted in applause. But Joan Crawford's name never came. The chill in her eyes then made those nearby step back. A Variety reporter described it. If Crawford's gaze were a knife, the entire front row would have bled. From that moment, Joan began to plan. Those working at the Brentwood apartment said she spent nights writing letters, making calls, and meeting Academy members. She didn't talk about the film a former maid recalled, she talked about opportunity. The opportunity for others to shine if Mrs. Davis didn't win. It seemed Joan could not bear the thought that the woman she despised would once again walk onto the Oscar stage to the applause of the world. On awards night, April 8, 1963, at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, the air felt as thick as a storm before the rain. Bette Davis appeared in a form-fitting silver dress hair in a high chignon, her confidence bordering on defiance. Photographers jostled and flashed like fireworks. In the back rows, Joan Crawford slipped in, quietly draped in a metallic silver gown with a jewel-encrusted neckline, her smile painted to perfection, a smile masking a scheme. When Anne Bancroft's name was called for the miracle worker, the audience applauded, but no one came forward. The host hesitated. Miss Bancroft could not attend this evening. And in that instant, Joan Crawford rose, her smile blooming. She stepped onto the stage, hair gleaming under the lights, the hem of her gown whispering across the red carpet. Each step was a public insult. The camera panned to Bette Davis, her face frozen, lips pressed tight, eyes cold as a blade. The entire auditorium knew they were witnessing a historic moment. Joan accepted the statuette on Anne Bancroft's behalf, turned to the audience, and smiled. "I'm honored to accept this award for Anne. Thank you for giving me the privilege of touching something sacred." Soft, nervous laughter rustled through the hall. Bette Davis recalled years later. "When she hugged that statue, I nearly got up to slap her across the face right there on stage. But then I understood she only wins if I react." After the ceremony, photographers poured backstage where Joan posed with the Oscar while Bette walked past, head-high, face unreadable. A Life magazine cameraman captured an image that chilled everyone, Joan beaming, and behind her, Bette staring, eyes dry and blazing, as if looking at the person who had killed something inside her. 3 days later, Bette found an envelope on her desk. Inside was a pearl-colored card, the handwriting neat. "Thank you for yielding the stage. It suits me better." No signature, but the scent of Chanel No. 5 clung to the paper. By 1988, in her final interview, Bette admitted, "I never forgot that night. I lost the award, but she lost her soul. That's the difference between an actress and someone who puts on an act." After Joan's death in 1977, stories of the night the Oscar was stolen continued to circulate. By 1992, an internal Academy fax leaked, showing Joan Crawford had worked behind the scenes to ensure Anne Bancroft would not attend the ceremony and had reserved the silver gown she wore that night more than 2 weeks in advance. Everything seemed perfectly orchestrated, like the most lavish revenge play Hollywood had ever seen. That night was not just an awards ceremony, it was the apex of a half-century feud. When the lights went out, Bette Davis left the hall in silence. But inside her, a new vow was formed. She told her close friend Olivia de Havilland, "If they call that a victory, just wait. I'll show them what hell looks like." After the 1963 Oscar night, the glamour of both women faded like stage lights after the final curtain. Joan Crawford's allure waned. Bette Davis drifted through fewer roles, failed marriages, and newspaper mentions that reduced them to relics in Hollywood's museum. And yet, some feuds don't die with time, they merely sleep in the heart, waiting to be summoned on a late afternoon. 35 years later, with hands trembling from age, Bette Davis finally chose to say everything, not to take revenge, but to be unburdened. March 1988. In a small Beverly Hills apartment, Bette Davis sat before Vanity Fair's camera body. Frail hair, afraid silver eyes, still burning like an old flame. After decades of silence, she agreed to one interview. When the reporter asked about Joan Crawford, the room fell still. Bette smiled faintly, and her voice quivered. "I've been fighting a ghost my whole life." She said that years after Joan's death, 1977, she still dreamed of her rival sitting at the foot of the bed in a white dress, smirking, "I'm still prettier than you, Bette." Each time she woke in tears. Sometimes she told herself, "If she were alive, I might have no reason left to act." In one segment of the interview, Bette admitted she had written Joan an apology letter in 1979. That was after reading Mommy Dearest Christina Crawford's memoir, accusing her mother of cruelty and coldness. Bette said, "I finished it, and for the first time, I felt sorry for her. I wrote, 'Joan, perhaps we let Hollywood turn us into monsters. If you need someone who understands, I'm here.' But the letter was returned torn to pieces. Perhaps no one wanted to forgive anyone anymore." When asked, "Do you regret it?" Bette was silent for a long time, then whispered, "I wish I had hugged her just once." In that moment, tears rolled down the cheeks of the woman once called the Iron Queen of the screen. The light in the room seemed to soften. There was no proud Bette Davis anymore, only an 81-year-old woman looking back at the past as if watching an old reel fade away. A year later, on October 6, 1989, Bette Davis drew her last breath in a Paris hospital. When the nurses packed her things, they found an old yellowed photo of Joan Crawford in the nightstand drawer. On the back, scrawled in blue ink, "We were both devoured by Hollywood." No one knows when Bette wrote it. Some say in her final days. Others believe it was years earlier, after she realized their feud had never truly been between two women, but between two victims of the same ruthless world called Hollywood. And perhaps in that belated confession, Bette Davis finally found a sliver of peace she'd been denied all her life, if only in her last breath when the stage lights had died, and the ghost she once hated was still smiling somewhere in her memory. They say Hollywood makes stars, but sometimes it also makes ghosts. That line reads like an unofficial eulogy for both Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, two women who climbed to the peak of fame by sheer talent, yet fell into the abyss carved into their hearts by that very world. Their feud, outwardly a flurry of jealousy clashes, and Barb's was in truth the product of a machine that forced women to fight to survive. In Hollywood, if a woman is not loved, she must be feared. And Bette and Joan, each in her way, chose that path until they no longer knew where the stage ended and life began. What they left behind is not only cinema, but a mirror reflecting fame's dark face where talent and jealousy light and shadow blend until no boundary remains. Perhaps both were right and both were wrong. Bette Davis once said, "If there's a next life, I hope to meet her again, but this time I won't act." It sounds like a closing line, but also like the final forgiveness she never got to say. If you ever thought you understood Bette Davis or Joan Crawford, think again. They weren't just movie stars. They were two souls devoured by Hollywood, then thrown back to the world to be gawked at, judged, and misunderstood. And if after hearing their story, your heart is still pounding, don't catch your breath, because the truth, like the lives they lived, is always crueler than we imagine. If this story made you see Hollywood in a different light, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next untold confession secrets and hidden corners of its legends. Because behind every smile on the silver screen, there's always a crack, and we're here to tell you what lies beneath the glitter.